Hi and welcome to the Ruby Tuesday. My name is Ruben, and this is my review for Netflix's original movie, In the Shadow of the Moon. In the Shadow of the Moon is about a Philadelphia police officer who struggles with a lifelong obsession to track down a mysterious serial killer whose crimes defy explanation. I actually hadn't even seen a trailer for this. I went in completely fresh. I kind of knew it was a science fiction mystery, but what I got I was totally not expecting. So this film does span quite a long period of time. It's every 9 years. There's this killer that this cop becomes obsessed with. The Boyd Holbrook, who plays Locke, and you follow his storyline and his life. So the film is a film of two halves. On one hand, you have Locke, this cop who wants to be detective, and he has this case that seemingly is unsolvable. And every 9 years, this case takes up another notch, another ramp. And on the other side, you have Locke's family and friends, and how his life is intermingles with this kind of storyline is just messed up, and it's this brokenness story of this family as he becomes more and more obsessed. I thought the acting was pretty good in this, and I thought the story was very engaging. It's one of those films that you kind of, at the beginning, you're asking yourself what the hell is going to happen. The way it starts off, it kind of starts with a question of this is what the future might look like, and then it jumps back into the past in 1988, and it starts unraveling the story little bit by little bit, and you get segments of this film that it feels like it's broken up into bits, because basically you get a snapshot of what's happening every 9 years to this cop, and you see him age, and you see what has happened in his life, and it's quite soul destroying for him. I feel like most people will be engaged with that character. I do feel like the film slightly dips in the middle. There's a bit of a dragging in the storyline. I think they could have probably chopped it down a little bit, but for the most part the story is very engaging, and I think that's largely down to the story itself. It's been a long time since I felt that we have a film that feels fresh. So there are elements of kind of time travel and a story detective cop, a story about a cop who's trying to solve a serial killer case, and it's melded those two storylines together. And obviously we've had similar things like that before. It reminded me of 12 Monkeys and Looper and that kind of storyline, but I really like the way this was handled. So it's not dialogue heavy. It's very heavy on the kind of the atmosphere that each 9 years holds, and the cinematography within it. One of the things I noticed when I was watching it is that the director, who hasn't done many films actually. One of the films that most people don't know and I quite like is called Stakeland. He wrote, directed, acted, scripted. It was very much a part of that film, and I think it's kind of underrated, but there's similar techniques that he's used in this, and one of them I noticed reminded me of Mad Max Fury Road. I know that's kind of like taking a tangent off, like, oh, how is that related to this, Ruben? Well, there's this technique that he uses where you place the character center, or whatever you want your audience to look at is to be drawn in visually. So you divide it in half, and then you kind of just above halfway, you kind of draw the audience's eyes to whatever you are trying to portray on screen. And that technique is used a lot in this. Not all the time, because obviously there's different shots and low angles to portray what you're trying to show across. You're trying to get different atmospheres. Sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's action. But sometimes there's this technique that I used that I felt like it reminded me of that, how in Mad Max it was used to draw your attention to kind of center, and they've used that in here, and it's done really well because the cinematography with the kind of filmmaking techniques they have in this draws you in as a viewer visually quite well, and so when you have this unique story which feels kind of fresh, with that sort of cinematography, and then you have actors of this quite high caliber. You got Michael C. Hall as well, and so it just feels like an all-round fairly decent film. And I know Netflix original movies tend to be hit or miss, and I'm sure there'll be people that will rip this apart and probably find some of like the time logistics or time logic annoying. And there were parts in this film where I was a little bit annoyed because it definitely has a sense of plot protection. So there's this thing that sometimes writers do for their main characters, who they need to stay alive, so they have plot protection. So logically, when you get thrown out of a plane from a certain height, when you hit the water, you're going to die. But that doesn't happen in this. And there are a few times in this film that I noted to myself, like, well, I'm not sure that would happen. Thank goodness he has plot protection. And so, on one hand, it's a good script, it's well acted, it's an interesting story. I was engaged with the main character, and the end, I felt like it was justifying you having watched the whole story. So sometimes with films like this, you get to the end and you just feel like, wow, really? I sat through that whole thing just for that? But thankfully for me, at least, I thought, wow, okay, that's kind of decent. I didn't see it coming. I don't know if I'm just being like thick at the moment. I'm like, I didn't see it. Normally, I can tell like where the story's going to go, what's going to happen. But I didn't see the end. And I felt like, oh, that kind of justifies the whole story of what you've gone through. I would have liked a slightly bit more explanation, and there were things that I didn't quite get. I may have to watch it again to kind of unravel it a bit more. But it's a fairly intelligent film. It's well shot. It's well acted. I was engaged with the character, and apart from those kind of minor niggles, I think it's fairly good. I think you'll enjoy it. I hope you do. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about this film and the actors and the storyline. Whether you think it's one of Netflix's better whether you think it's one of Netflix's better original movies. I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a B because I think it's a solid film. It has got some issues. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say on this film. Let me know. Chat to me in the comments. But most of all, until next time, remember, live long and Tuesday.